I'm Mike and welcome to the workshop. And this week I'm going to show you how to make this unique side table out of materials that you can buy in any hardware store using basic tools, and it'll cost you less than 20 quid. So let's roll the intro and get into this project. To make this side table, all we're going to need is one 10-foot length of 2x2 plane and two 12-foot lengths of 3x1 plane, and you'll have some left over. That should run you just a little bit under €20. If you want to make this yourself, follow along as I make it. A full scale drawing will be available. Just drop me an email and I'll email it on to you, and we can all share how ours come out. So I'll bring you down to the bench, show you all the parts, and let's get started. So, as you can see, I've been a busy beaver. I've started to get out my components here. So we have four basic components here. Our top, the top of which we made out of 5 pieces of 3x1, cut at a length of 475. Now I'm going to go slightly above that and make a more advanced one, but you can just make the top just by gluing these up and doing nothing else. It won't really add costs because adding the thickness, which you'll see, you can do that just using the scraps that you have left over. We have our legs here, so 4 number at 477. You could adjust any of these to suit your own needs in terms of height. This is just what I have because I wanted to finish at 495. So that's the only 2x2 we're using here. As you can see, very little. I have plenty of waste on that for my next project. Our short rails, so we're going to need 4 number at 160. I've left one long piece here. I'll explain why I did that later. And finally, our long rails. So you're either going to need 3 or 4 of these, depending on whether you want to leave out that front rail like I did to put something under it, or you want to have that rail continue all the way around. Now, as you can see, I've done quite a lot of cutting multiple parts to the same length. So that's where we'll start. I'll show you the best practice for doing that, and then we can start making. If you watched my videos before, you've probably heard me say measurement is the enemy of accuracy. And that applies doubly here when you're trying to get out multiples that are the same size. So the best way to make sure everything is as close as possible to the same is to cut one and mark all the rest of that. Because with your tape, or even with this, you'll have slight variations and you'll end up with everything, even though you measured it, being slightly different. So it's very simple here. I'm going to show you as I cut the final leg. This is the one that I've used to mark all my legs with. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to have one square edge. So I'm going to flush it up perfectly with that square edge. I'm just rubbing here to make sure I don't feel any bumps. And then we're going to put a mark exactly at the end. And I want to make sure that I leave that pencil line, but barely. Then we're going to follow our standard marking rules here. So we'll pick a face side, face edge. So I'm going to follow that line all the way around, marking only off these faces that I've selected. And that is what I will cut to. This should make sure then that my cut is square if I'm in line with all these lines, and also the exact same length as the rest. Right, so we'll see if that worked. The pressure's on. They are perfectly the same height. So all you need to do is cut one to the right length, then take your time cutting the rest. You'll have multiples. They're exactly the same length. So the next thing then is we're going to mark out for the positions of our mid rails. Our top rails in this case we don't have to mark for because they're going to be flush with the top. So those are going to be 150 up. I'm going to mark my face side and face edges. What we're going to do next, we have this marked, we're going to introduce our new tool, which are these guys, dowel pins. You can get these for a couple of quid. All you do is you drill one hole, you stick these in, line up your two pieces and tap them, and that little pin in the center there gives you a center point gives you a center point to drill the hole that will match it. It's a great quick way of assembly, especially when you have these. So dowels are going to be what we're going to use for this. We'll start by marking these out, and I'll show you how to lay out and drill for your first holes for your dowels, which will be in the rails. And we'll mark it up. Then we'll line everything up, give it our little tap. We'll have our marks for our legs. We'll drill those holes, then we can assemble it. And while all of that is gluing up, we can work on our tap. You'll notice as I'm marking these lines that I'm swapping the sides of where the square is. This is to make sure that I'm always marking off my face side and face edge, which I've marked on all of these, having face side and face edge be the corner that's facing out into the room when it's made. So, with marking out multiples, the adage that I mentioned before of measuring being the enemy of accuracy is doubly important. So if I'm doing something like this where I'm making legs or several parts that have to be identical, I'll mark one up first, perfect, and then mark everything off that. That means that even if I mess up my measurement on the first one, they're all the same, so it works out fine. And again, you have the same thing where slight misalignments means the whole thing is wrong, really. And a small error on one, add on, and eventually you're way off. So this is the best way to do. Mark one, and then that is your measuring stick for everything else. So everything goes back to this one. So all your lines will line up. And always going off your little man, your face side and face edge, which I've discussed before. If there's one piece of advice I can give someone who's made a lot of mistakes making stuff, it's the more information you can give yourself to make sure it's right, the easier it is not to mess up. So on these that you guys saw marking before, I put some notes. So on that, I'm telling myself this is the top, it's from the front, and as I look at it, it's the right hand side. Why is that important? Well, pretty much so, if you don't mark it up and you don't check it, what you will end up doing is putting holes in the wrong place. Ask me how I know. So, I'm going to put these away for 1 second. We're going to mark up our rails, get them ready to drill our holes so we can mark it, pin it, put in our dowels, put it all together. I'm going to start with a long rail. I don't know if you can see that. Ooh. Now the long rails we'll be getting, again, I will probably put a better clip of this, a little scoop out of the bottom just to make them look nice. So we're going to have to allow for that when we drill our holes. Sorry, that's the long rails on the top, and short rails on top will get it as well. So this is pretty much so standard marking. We want this to be centered on this piece, and down an amount and up an amount to make sure that we get a good bite. So I'll bring it down, show what I'm doing here. So our material here is 18mm thick, so you should be able to put a line at 9. You can use the old thumb gauge trick. Thumb gauge is very accurate. So like I said, I'm taking a scoop out of this. So I'm going to come down 20 from the top and then 25 from the bottom to make sure that my hole doesn't impact that scoop. And then if you have a brad awl, you can use a brad awl to get your point for when you're screwing, or you can just use a nail or something like that, or a screw, just to give you a point. Brad awls are very handy, so if you can afford it, they're only a couple of quid. They're very handy. So you can see there, I'm slightly off, but we'll take care of that. And now it's time to drill our holes. So one of the most difficult things you can do is to drill a hole that is perfectly straight and parallel. Practice comes into this a lot, but I'm going to show you a little method here that'll help you get everything right. So the first thing, I have this in my vise, but as I've shown before in this series, you can just clamp it with the clamps that are in our set to a vertical surface or an edge of a table. We'll take our square, bring it up to this, and make sure that the piece is perfectly square to whatever tabletop we're using. So let's give it a little shake, make sure we're good to go. Then what I want to do is extend your square so that it's flush here at the bottom. This will allow us then to place our square on the table. So using this then, the line on the front of our square and the line on the side of our square should be at 90 degrees, and we're going to use this as a reference point. So as we're drilling, we're going to reference off this edge to make sure we're straight up and down, and we'll reference off this edge to make sure we're not going left or right. We're keeping our eye in both directions and turning off hammer, making sure that we're not straying in either direction. And I got slightly ahead of myself. Hail surprise. We need to make a stop, make sure we don't drill too far. This is really simple. Piece of masking tape. So our dowel is 40mm long. So from the point here, I'm going to come down about 21. I'm just going to line in our piece of masking tape like that, work it around, and that creates a visual stop for us. So we have to stop drilling as soon as we get that masking tape. Now it's important you don't go past the masking tape and blow away your dust, because what can happen is, if you're using masking tape, you can keep pushing this up and you'll keep going deeper and deeper. For this it's probably not as important, but if you were using this as a stop, let's say if you were drilling into a top or something and you didn't want to burst out the other side, you'd want to make sure not to do that. So now it's rinse and repeat for all of these. Right, so now we have all our marking done. Now it's time to get our little dowel pins so we can transfer these marks onto our legs. So I'm going to show this once, but the same process follows all the way around. So, now my top, I know this is the top, this is the left, this is the right. I'm going to bring this in, make sure I put the face side down, the top up. And very simply, I'm actually going to use the other leg to line it up so everything is nice, lined up, flush on my table. I'm just going to give a wee tap, and everything lining up correctly. We should get two little dots here, which you can see. That's where I'm going to drill my holes, and I'm going to swap over my dowel pins this side to the same thing, put in our little dowel pins, make sure we're facing in the right direction, use our other leg to square everything up, hold everything relatively tight, give it a little tap. You can see the pin even came out with it. I have my two little holes. Now it's only a matter of doing the exact same thing again. Drilling our holes while checking that we're going square. I'm going to eye this because I've done it before more than once. I've also messed up more than once, so don't get overconfident either. Now we'll get our dowels. Dowels are very cheap. You can pick up a box of them for about 150 of them for about a fiver. They're a great little assembly tool. Then we'll check with right, top, everything is good to go, and we'll check it. There have been no cuts, you can see that, and you can also see everything is nice and flush. A little bit off here, we can fix that, but that's pretty good. So we'll do the other side for complete. An example to show how accurate you can get with dowels if you take your time. Normally I wouldn't do the doweling, putting together part, until I had glue on it. The glue does expand the dowel slightly, makes them grip a bit better, but here you can see in a few minutes we have one done. So when we have everything done around the sides, around the top, we need to do those smaller bottom rails. So there's a couple of ways you could do it. And in the material list I'll give you this as well. So these are for my shorter back rails, which will go in between these two front and back frames. And I've left this one to make the two lower ones long, so it'll be easy to cut it. So what we're going to do, this needs to be 50mm, so we're going to rip this. I'm going to show you two quick methods for doing that, depending on what you do or don't have. So method one applies if you're lucky enough to have a vise. What you're going to do is clamp it vertically, and much like you're making an end cut, which I've shown before, you're going to reference off two edges. Now we're going to leave a little bit of line because we're plane it down to final size. We're going to start at the corner, follow that line, and then slowly work our way down. So once you get down to your bench top, you want to cut into your nice bench top. I'm going to bring it up in there a little bit, because you don't want to get too wobbly. Now, once you get down to the point where you can't really clamp any more in the vise, we're going to flip it over and come in from the other side. So, I'm down to my bench top there now. I kind of can't go much further, so I'm going to turn it around and just come in from the other side to that last little bit. And that is that, nicely squared up. I'm going to put it in our vise and work down to those pencil lines we've left. I don't normally recommend other people's videos on my videos, but I do recommend you look up Paul Seller's oil can or rag in a can video. This little bit of oil on the base makes such a difference. So we're just gonna, maybe a bit quicker than that, but slowly bring this down until we match those lines at both sides. That's nice and true. We'll check that we're square. Yeah. We're good to go. So now we can cut these to length. The reason I left these long is it's a lot easier to cut one long length and then cut it off. So for method 2, all you're going to need is the clamp you were born with, your knee and a low bench. Same thing here, we're going to start line at the end, pull it back so you don't get too much rubbing. We're just going bringing it forward. And we get to the point where you're scared you're going to cut your knee, or you can't support it anymore. And then you turn it around and work in from this side. So for these mid rails, as I've marked all the way along, I'm going to pour it exactly against that rail. Make sure I have this facing the right way, because we're going to take a scoop of this. I'm going to hold everything in place. And a light little tap with our magic tapping tool. We have our 2 dents. We'll just drill those and continue. So now it's time to shape our rails. So in the CAD for this you'll get these nice print off in A4 1:1 templates for marking these curves, but you could hide it if you wanted. So the first thing I need to do is cut these out. Then we're going to use the internet's favourite trick, the super glue and masking trick, to put these together, because I want it to be a perfect match. We'll glue on our templates and cut them out. Now cutting through 2 layers like this with a coping saw, so a bit tough. Want to make sure you have a new blade in, and you're just going to go as straight as you can. And again, if you don't have a bench, you can just clamp it down to a low bench or stool. There we have it, 2 matching curves. The next thing we need to do is even this out, because this is a rough cut, and for that we're going to use a trick I've shown many times, which is just a dowel wrapped in a piece of sandpaper. Work your way up to the grits, you get these 2 exactly the same. Right, so now we have this sanded. All we need to do is get our chisel, very carefully insert it in the gap, give it a slight little twist, and these pop apart with no nasty residue. So if you look at this page on our drawings, you see here we have this leg with a taper. So that taper is going to be on the inside faces. We're going to keep the outside edge square. So I'm finishing at 23. So I'll mark 23 here on my end. And we're going up 125. 1, 2, 5. And we're simply going to join those 2 lines. That's our tape on this side. Turn it over, and we do the exact same, making sure we don't mark wrong. So I'm going to mark all my waist sides here, and we're going to score that along the top as well. Do the same, because when we cut off one face we won't have a reference. This cut is no different than any other, even though it's on an angle. What I like to do if I'm clamping it in my vise here is I like to have the angle line I'm cutting at 90 degrees to the table. Just helps me go straight down. Like any other cut, we're going to take 2 lines of reference. Do a bit of a knot there. Now we have one side done. We're already missing a side here, so we're just gonna be extra careful we don't drift off when we do the other side. Now we have a nice taper. What I want to do then is grab our plane. We should still have a tiny bit of our line on either face. We're just going to slowly work it down until that line is perfect. The saw stopped cutting here, so I'm just going to give it, just in that area, a few passes to level it out. When everything's nice and level then, we just work the whole thing in. So we get a nice smooth face. There we have our not unattractive tapered bottom to the leg. It took 2 minutes. Adds a nice bit of style. Now, all I have to do is 3 more of these. But first, tea. And now the time has come when we see if all this careful marking, identifying and matching pays off. Is this glue time? Now we'll be doing this several times over this glue up. You want to check for square. And the handy way to check for square is to measure the diagonals. So I'm going to come from my top corner, come down to my bottom here. So that's 631. And that is 631 and a half. Good enough for government work. Now, if like me, on your front, you want to take off that front rail so you can push something under it, you're going to need one more piece of timber, which is this. This is just a piece that's got the exact width of the bottom rail. And we're going to clamp that in place, and we're clamping this up to stop our frame going. Now these two are the clamps. Let's make this frame complete, shall we? So to check an assembled frame like this, you want to do the same kind of principle. You want to check the diagonals at the top. 483. 481. Let's focus on our top. So a brief overview. I go through this a lot. And when you're gluing up a panel, you want the end grain to alternate. So if it's like this on this panel, you want to go like this on that panel. That means that the forces cancel one another out. Now, as we're buying plain 4 sides timber, our joints are going to be pretty good. But I'm going to spend a bit of time arranging these how I want them. Then I'll number them, and then we'll look at the jig for gluing up a flat panel. This is the advantage of buying plain 4 sides material, particularly over this length. You're generally going to be able to glue your panels together without doing much or any work. But we'll go into sweetening joints and how to get everything absolutely perfect in another video, probably an in-depth video on the plane. But for now, with hand pressure, all these joints are closing, so I'm happy. Now let's talk about our really simple jig for gluing up panels. So this jig has 2 constituent parts. One, just a straight piece that I've screwed down to my bench, and the second is this. So this is just a piece of material that I split at a slight angle, again using the methods I showed earlier. Give a little plane so they're touching. This is going to give us a wedge that'll clamp our stuff together. Let me show you. So I've marked this so I know how to put it back together. And all we're going to do is we're going to push everything nice and tight against that fence. But what we're doing is we're pulling out the wedge ever so slightly. And then we're going to screw this in place. That'll allow me then to line all my stuff up just like I want it, tapping that wedge. That wedge then applies even pressure all across this panel, closes all those joints. Now that everything is lined up, we're going to draw a pyramid and number it. This will allow me to easily put this all back together when we glue it. The last thing I want to do is I don't want this to stick to my admittedly very dirty bench top. For that, it's time for a trip to the kitchen. That was not entirely true. In fact, it was a bull-faced lie. But I always keep grease-proof around the workshop. It's excellent for not having stuff stick. So, I'm just going to rip a couple of pieces of grease-proof paper here, stick them in my clamping apparatus, and this should stop everything sticking. Actually, yeah, I can save on greaseproof. I keep this piece for the next glue. And now, should be all set. So I had a piece here, just a little bit of weight, in this case some planes, on a piece of greaseproof, just to keep it down flat to the surface. Pull out our wedge. That is nice and flat. Now if you're just going to go with the basic version of this, with the single top, you can skip ahead. I'll put a little thingy somewhere to skip ahead to. But if you're going with the stacked top to make it look like 2 inches, really simple. I'll talk you through it right now and then we can get going. So what we have here is our top, and I have placed my base onto it. And to do this thickening, all you're going to need is 2 strips that'll go on the front, which will keep that nice front grain, long grain. 2 strips to go on the side. So I'm going to start with the front because it's easy to square it up here. So I'm just going to get everything nice and squared, and then using a few playing cards, I'm just going to insert them in here to give me a little air gap for when we're installing it. Same on this side. We're flush all along, which means we're straight. Perfect. So I'm going to leave the card in there, just get a little bit of glue and glue this in place. Like this. We have a few minutes to work here, and we will be taking the cards out before the glue can stick. Just the same on the other side. And then what you want to do is just throw a few pins in here. We'll be filling them to hold it in place so we can clamp it. Now I happen to have my pinner set up for a different job, so I'm just going to stick a few pins in here. But it's the same thing with a panel pin. The advantage of the panel pin, of course, is you can draw the panel pin back out. Pull out our cards, pull out our front, and let that dry. Right here, so the clamps, first thing we're going to do is flush all this up, and then we're going to add our nice little chamfers. So now we're going to add a little 45 to this. It's pretty simple, it's just 50-50. So we're going to plane off where that joint is, which will also help mask it. Add a 45. Now, we'll just join those 2 lines. I know I'm working. This would be a lot easier if it was laying down flat, but I already have it clamped. And I was lazy. Well now, planing, planing, planing. So after much planing and careful sanding, we now have our top ready to go. Now for final touch, I'm going to stain the top a different colour. Almost there. Nice, we are top, nice and stained, make it look a bit different. Now the final bit of making on this job, I'm going to make 2 become 1. For that, we're going to need these little inch angle brackets. Pick them up for about 2 or 3 quid a package. So let's bring it down, show you what to do. Here again I'm going to use playing cards as spacers. What I want to do is to raise the brackets slightly up so when I screw in the top it pulls it all together. So I'm going to put 1 on each end and then 2 on the long faces. And then it's just a matter of screwing it all together. So now all we need to do is insert this where it belongs, a few more screws, and this is good to go. There's one more thing, and this is a very important thing. So in order to stop the bottoms of our feet chipping, we need to taper the ends. Get a small little chamfer. You can use sandpaper, whatever. I have my small plane, you could use your big plane. All we want to do is put the little chamfer on all edges to stop breakout. Now it's time for the long-awaited return of Danish oil time. And there we have it. For the price of a few fancy coffees, you have a unique handmade end table that you can brag to your friends about making yourself. So, if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And absolutely do try this at home. Forgive me, Laura, but I'm dying. Where did you go to, my ripsaw? When you're alone in your bed. I love you.